Now, more of the Casey Reynolds Show on KFQD.
All right, welcome back to the Casey Reynolds Radio Show here on FM 103.7 KFQD, joined in studio by Ethan Berkowitz for our end of the week wrap-up. Also joined on the Newsmaker line by Dr. Craig Detweiler, who is a professor over there at Pepperdine University who specializes in the intersection between mythology, religion, and film, and his book. Now, Dr. Detweiler, tell me if I'm wrong. You've got another book coming out. Do you want to... I talked about your past book a few minutes ago, but do you have a new book coming out?
Yes, I'm just wrapping up a book on sort of faith and technology, about how much faith we put in our cell phones and Facebook and Google, and just looking at that as kind of the where a lot of our energy and meaning-making is going online.
Really? So we're literally, our technology is literally becoming faith-based. Like we're having that much trust in it where it's almost crossing the line into faith?
Well, I think it's pretty blind faith most of the time, that we feel like somehow more access we always think is a better thing. And we always carry it with us. We're never apart from it, So that cell phone is kind of omnipresent in our life. And then the amount of information that we give to these services like, Facebook and Twitter, that almost makes us, it makes it omniscient. It's everything about us. And it's all for their consumption.
Well, when you have that book come out, we'll have to have you back on because that you're scaring me a little bit, but also intriguing me at the same time. Now, talk about some of the work that you had previously done in your book that's out is Into the Dark, Seeing the Sacred in the Top Films of the 21st Century. So give me a couple of films maybe that in first watching it, I might not have known, or people typically don't get maybe some of the religious currents or undertones in it, but that are definitely there and were intended to be there.
Well, I think a good example would be the Harry Potter series. When it first came out, you had religious people protesting, saying, "Oh, this is about wizards. It's about magic." Keep the
it's
kids
like
away.
witchcraft type stuff.
Like Halloween.
Hold up, we got to turn your mic.
Like
here.
Halloween,
Yeah, exactly. But then by the end of the series, I don't want to give it away too much. I think it's been out enough now, right?
Yeah.
It ends with Harry getting involved in basically having to sacrifice his life. He lays down his life for the sake of his friends. And guess what? He's resurrected at the end. Dude comes back and lives again. So that's kind of a small example of the kind of movie magic that is really trafficking in these, I would call them almost eternal questions.
Now, and there are also some that don't seem to have done it very well. Like they may have intended maybe some religious tones in their movie, but and the one that I'm thinking of, and maybe you can give me other examples or tell me about this, is I remember watching Prometheus, right? The sort of the alien prequel.
Yes.
And I think most people walked out confused, like, why were the master race aliens mad at us? What the hell happened? There were religious sort of scenes in the movie, but they weren't really coherent. And you walked out not really getting it. I don't know if, most of the people I talked to seemed like that. But then when I went online to try to read up and be like, what the hell was going on? Apparently the reason the aliens wanted to kill all of us was because Jesus was really a space alien Jesus, and we killed him, and so then they hated us. Can you give me some insight into that? And then maybe a couple of other movies that tried but kind of failed with trying to hit on maybe some of the religious tones.
Sure. Well, with Prometheus, it was brought to us by the guy who wrote Lost, and they do a good job of kind of raising questions and making things seem spooky and mysterious. But then when they actually get down to try to explain it, it completely falls apart, and it just looks ludicrous. So it's kind of using something profound to try to make your film seem like it's actually profound, when it really actually, when when all the House of Cards, you start picking away at it, it all kind of tumbles in front of you, and you're like, I think that was just a mess.
And so is there another example of a movie that it tried and just didn't get there? Like you even as a professional, as a doctor, sitting there watching it going, wow, these guys just didn't know what the hell they were doing and trying to imbue this movie with some sort of religious meaning.
Well, a lot of people, the Book of Eli, with Denzel Washington, a lot of people liked it. But until the ending, we'll kind of go for the surprise twist ending, that, kind of tells you something like, actually, he was blind the whole time while he was killing thousands of people with his sword,
Right.
And and it's kind of cool as an idea, but then when you go back and think of the film, it's like, that's ludicrous. You know, that's crazy.
Well,
this is one of the problems of like the surprise ending. It's kind of the Shyamalan factor, right? Like he did it once with Sixth Sense, and we were all like, "Ooh, that's really cool." And everything he's ever tried since then,
but now we're looking for it every time he does a movie, and so you're like on edge the whole movie, like I'm going to figure this one out. Now, give me an idea of a movie that did it well. Is there a movie out there that has good, maybe religious overtones to it, maybe some religious themes, and it just seemed to have worked both in terms of integrating it into the story and making the film work and getting its point across? Is there one or two you might recommend there?
I think everybody loved The Blind Side, you know, and I think it's because they kind of got inside the characters. They had real people it was based on. You know, you had a real football player, you had a real family who really adopted him. And Sandra Bullock, she said she didn't want to do the film, but once she met the woman that she was going to play, the real life woman, she's like, this woman's legit. She's totally real in how she lives out her faith. And I think audiences could feel that. You know, the film was made by a Texas filmmaker, so he understood kind of Memphis, he understood college football, all that kind of thing. So it's the same. I'm sure in Alaska you must go crazy when people sort of depict a fake version of Alaska, right? So if somebody ever got it right, you'd be like, thank you for understanding.
We go nuts when fake politicians try to run claiming that they were Alaskans or conservatives, but that's a whole nother that's a whole nother subject. And so give me, I guess one of the movies that immediately comes to my mind in terms of having symbolism and maybe implied meaning with like every single scene and every single line was The Matrix. What was your thoughts on The Matrix in terms of how they integrated what seemed to be lots of different kinds of religious imagery and religious undertones, but still made it sort of a coherent story that was fun to watch even if you weren't paying attention to any of that?
You know, it's amazing you brought this up because I actually had the associate producer of The Matrix in my house last week talking to students about this very subject.
Really?
Yeah, about how they put it all together, how they wove it together. He said, yeah, absolutely. The Wachowski brothers, they had read all that philosophy. They had done all their homework. And, you know, he said that originally Neo as the one, he said that's a late development in the script. That was something they discovered in doing the film. And I think that's actually movies at their best when they're sort of when the filmmaker's on a journey of discovery as well, and they realize, whoa, I didn't see this twist coming. And then the audience kind of feels the same way, like, whoa, that's a whole nother level, way cooler. And that's the way we felt when we sat down to watch The Matrix, right? It was like, I've never seen this cool.
Now, is there
real?
Is there a nugget in there where if I like rewatch the movie that maybe I missed in terms of being a nugget that you as somebody who does this professionally give me an idea of something I should look out for that I might otherwise have missed?
Oh, I think everybody broke it down. I mean, you had everything from the character named Trinity to, you know, the ship being the Nebuchadnezzar, you know, Old Testament reference there. You had the oracle and the bending of the spoon, so parts of it could have been taken as almost like a Buddhist kind of thing. So, you know, that's a film that rewards repeat viewings. I think because the filmmakers really did their homework, and they didn't prescribe how to interpret it. Yeah, they left you enough room that you could kind of do the work on it.
And
that's where it's fun.
That they layered it so much that every time you watch it, you see something. Like I watched it, in the last 6 months, and I never realized one of the books that he keeps like all his files in is one of the Nietzsche books. Friedrich Nietzsche.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a book that I remember I had read in college in a philosophy class, and it was sort of rewarding in that sense. Now, what about? I would be remiss if I didn't ask about, of course, the Star Wars trilogy. That obviously has a lot of religious tones to it. What is your take on that in terms of a movie that has some of these themes?
Well, George Lucas from the beginning took directly from Joseph Campbell. He said, I'm going to lean into all the great myths of history. And so all of that quest and journey and, you know, Luke needing, in a sense, a father figure, and he kind of goes into a proverbial cave where Yoda trains him. I mean, all of these things go back, you know, they're back to Christianity, Judaism, they're back to Greek myths. You know, these are the core questions of life, which is why the film still resonates, right? 40 years later.
They're core questions, but they're also great stories. And I think that's probably why religion as story has been able to hold audiences, and why Hollywood as the new storyteller is able to tap into the same veins.
Now, do you get a sense, Craig Detweiler is professor at Pepperdine University, do you get a sense that religious officials in general are embracing Hollywood in a way to say, hey, let's bring more of these themes? Because we have these great traditional stories that are in the Bible, and they're time-tested, and they're rich, but maybe Hollywood can add something to them or provide some of these themes to help us retell these stories to young people in a culturally updated manner that makes sense to them. Do you get a sense that the religious community as a whole is really buying into that, or are they seeing the Hollywood as, oh, those godless liberals that we want to stay away from? What are you seeing in terms of that interaction?
Well, I think we're in a profoundly different time. When you see Mark Burnett, and who created
he's Survivor guy, right? Yeah.
Right, and then he says, I'm going to do 10 hours on the Bible for the History Channel, right? It broke records for the History Channel. So History Channel didn't expect it. Nobody expected Mark Burnett to do it, and yet audiences loved it. It's probably going to get a bunch of Emmy Awards in a couple weeks. Another crazy example, I feel like whenever Hollywood wants to go big, right, with special effects, they often go biblical. And so this is hard to believe, but Russell Crowe is going to star as Noah in a film that's coming out next year.
Whoa, so he's going to be Jor-El and Noah?
Exactly.
There's not some sort of limit on how many biblical or pseudo-biblical figures you can play?
He's the biggest, right? He's the manliest. So who else is going to be Noah, right?
Charlton Heston is Moses. Cecil B. DeMille, that goes.
No, I get it, but it seems like Russell Crowe, it's sort of like everybody wants what's his name to be the voice of God? The guy who was in the Jim Carrey movie. Morgan Freeman. Like everybody, like that's the voice of God right now, right? And so, how many movies can you watch where he's the voice of God before you go? Can't you find some just for variety's sake? Now it's like Russell Crowe is going to play every like Moses Noah type figure. Okay, I mean it's not the worst casting in the world, but I have to be honest, I'd bring in someone different. Dr. Craig Detweiler, thanks for joining us. The book that's currently out is Into the Dark, Seeing the Sacred in the Top Films of the 21st Century. Where can people get your book?
Oh, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, online, wherever you'd like it.
All right. Well, we'll have to have you back on when your next book comes out, because that sounds like an interesting read as well. Thanks for joining us, sir.
Thank you so much, Casey.
The Casey Reynolds Show.
They're going to cut us off. They're not going to listen to us.
On Alaska's Place to Talk, KFQD.